I think we're in the summer of crypto again. I think a lot of good things are going to happen in the next 18 months. That is the definition of a shitcoin. I mean, what else could it be?
GM, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Decrypt's podcast. I'm here with none other than Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame. Welcome to the show, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Great to be here. Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
I know you just got done filming some episodes for season 16 of Shark Tank, and I think we should just start out with a moment to appreciate how long of a run that really is and the source of inspiration that it is for a lot of people. One of the things that I'm thinking about these days is when it comes to this recent group, did you notice anything specifically about how these entrepreneurs presented themselves or the way that they pitched their companies this time around?
You really brought up a great point there because Shark Tank going into season 16 is almost unprecedented. We had no idea when we started this how big it would become. And I look at it now as an international passport. It doesn't matter what country in the world I go to. It could be Saudi Arabia, France, England, Germany, Austria, Switzerland. They all watch Shark Tank. It's like an international passport. I've met royalty. I've met leaders of these countries as a result of what Shark Tank means. We're exporting the American dream. That's what it is. And everybody on earth, regardless of geography or the politics of their country, want to be entrepreneurs. And Shark Tank is sort of like the passport of that. And so I'm very appreciative, obviously. But I've also, said this, and I think this to be true, that Shark Tank represents what the economy is going to look like in the next 24 months. The deals we see now are the products and services that the market's going to bring to growth 2 years from now. And so it's like a little fishbowl, if you want, or a petri dish, or an experiment that's occurring in front of you. And I think that's why it's such compelling television.
Sure. And, I think you talk about Shark Tank being viewed all over the world. I mean, it's also inspired its fair share of spin-offs, including in the crypto world. I'm curious if you've had an opportunity to look at it's called Killer Whales, I believe it is. It ran on Apple TV for a while and focused specifically on crypto. Curious if you have any thoughts on that show.
I've seen them all. I've seen all the competitors, all the wannabes. They come, they go. There's only one Shark Tank. And it's hard to explain, why that is. Its success, the knockoff started in the fifth year because most shows die after three. And they kept coming and coming, and there was all kinds of derivatives. But there's something about the ecosphere of Shark Tank. And when we talk about people that are pitching on, we shot already half of season 16. There are many of them in their second generation of watching Shark Tank. I mean, people grew up with it. They know which shark they're after. They know my portfolio, for example, of deals I've done over 16 years, where they fit in the continuum of my portfolio, why I would buy it or wouldn't, and all of that. And I think that makes it very sticky. It also makes it unpredictable because you don't know what's going to work. And I every year, maybe I do 10, 12, 15 deals. The ones that I think are going to be huge hits never work out that way. It's the ones that I think, well, I'll take a shot, I'll take a flyer, that I get a 200x on, like 300 times the return. And that pays for all my mistakes. And that is the nature of venture capital anyways. And so I think Shark Tank really teaches you about diversification, why it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, people almost use it as a lexicon, as a Bible. You can throw out a bunch of different words to describe the way that people look at Shark Tank as a source of inspiration, especially among younger generations that all they know really is Kevin O'Leary and Mark Cuban, and along those lines, just sort of that evolution of going into the business world. One of the things you described it as a petri dish. I would almost describe it as a fortune teller in some sense, where you're looking at this crystal ball and you're assessing, looking towards the future, whether or not this is going to work. In crypto, that crystal ball is just as valid. Curious if you have any sort of visions when you look into that crystal ball when it comes to the crypto market specifically right now.
Well, I've been a participant in the crypto markets during many of its phases, and I would argue we're in a very interesting time now because we have just emerged out of the era of the crypto cowboy. They're all in jail or they're out of business. The regulators won, and I don't think that's a problem because I think the real potential of crypto is now being unleashed as we see evidence of these ETFs, most notably the ETH that just came, the Bitcoin already. This is the integration of crypto into the financial services industry worldwide. And it needed to go through its cowboy phase. And I obviously realized that some of those pioneers that were founders didn't play by the rules and they suffered the consequences. I guess CZ is now in jail, and so is Sam Bankman-Fried. Yet they founded giant exchanges that have sort of led the way into a more compliant world. And today, what I'm really excited about and why I've continued, we were just doing a mark to market. We're almost at 20% of our portfolio in crypto assets now.
Wow.
And that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit. But it's not just the tokens. Sure, I've got ETH. Sure, I've got Bitcoin. I've got HBAR, Solana. You know, I got a lot of them. But I'm a big believer in the picks and shovels. I really think if you were offered, if I said to you, we could go back in time and you could become a founding shareholder of the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, what a great investment that would have been. Well, that's how I feel about exchanges, because it's agnostic to the price of Bitcoin or any token. They can go up and down. The exchange is the picks and shovels. It's the infrastructure. It gets paid on every transaction. And so for me, that's what interests me the most. Where can I be participating in the picks and shovels? And I'll give you three examples. Number one, WonderFi up in Canada. They have 1.7 million accounts. They're the largest up in the Canadian market. They're regulated by the OSC, which takes a lot of its guidance from the SEC. M2 in Abu Dhabi under the ADGM. I think M2 is going to end up owning a lot of the assets that bleed off of Binance, because Binance is owned by a felon. I mean, that's an unfortunate outcome, and I feel bad about that, but there's not much I can do about it. And so if I'm a financial investor, I have to look out for where I'm allowed to be compliant. And so I'm thinking a lot of those assets bleed off to M2. I own that through a company that's public on the ADX in Abu Dhabi called Phoenix Technologies. They own a big piece of M2 because M2 is actually private, backed by sovereign wealth. But that's the way you can get ownership of it.
Before we get too far away from it, I think the topic of crypto cowboys is fascinating, because when we spoke a year ago, I mean, you called it pretty straight out in terms of them going by the wayside. I think we spoke last time before CZ's sentence of 25 years and before Binance's $4 billion sentence. I just wanted to ask you real quick whether you think that 4-month sentence that CZ received is fair, or whether you think it should have aligned more sort of with the 25 years that SBF did receive.
I think they're two different situations, but CZ's not out of the woods. He still faces the SEC on civil charges. The real problem for both of these men, although they were pioneers and together owned over 95% of the exchange market, they were frenemies. I mean, the saga of what happened, it's really interesting to see that the offers now, if you have a claim on FTX, are as high as 120%. You know, that's in the post-mortem, it's rather interesting to see that many people may get their money back there. But the challenge for both of them is they are now felons. Once you're a felon, it changes everything for you in terms of what can be done in financial services. You don't get to play the same way, and that really makes it hard to be an operator. That's why I tell people, if you're going to be playing in financial services and you're going to be in any way involved in financial markets, you have to be compliant 100% of the times. If you fall off the rails and become a felon, many institutions, just by their own rules, can't deal with you. So I think that's the challenge for CZ, who's still a majority shareholder of Binance, and that means a lot of institutions won't use Binance anymore. He'd have to divest of his ownership. I don't know what he's going to do. He's in jail. We'll have to wait till he gets out. But meanwhile, M2 is setting up, and there'll be others as well. I think in North America, WonderFi, and now WonderFi just made an announcement a couple of weeks ago, they're moving into Australia as well.
When you look at international expansion, the people that claim that vacuum that CZ and SBF left is going to be very pertinent over the next few years. And, you know, when the crypto cowboys fall by the wayside, what I've seen from my perspective is people like BlackRock's Larry Fink step in. And, you know, I know you've talked about the ETFs before in terms of saying, you know, why would I want to pay that management fee? But when you look at the way that this has sort of set the tone among institutions and possibly even academics, like, how do you feel that the new face of cryptocurrency, what do you think that's going to look like? Is it going to look like more Larry Finks or people like yourself?
I think, let's go back to Larry Fink. That was a big turnaround. Larry Fink was originally against crypto, specifically Bitcoin. The asset base with his own clients, they started to say, look, we want to put a 3% allocation, a 1% allocation, whatever it is they want to do in alternative assets in crypto. And he's smart. He saw the world changed and he now endorses it. And of course, at the same time, Gensler brought forward the first ETF around Bitcoin. There was a lot of excitement about that the first day. I mean, ETH came out 48 hours ago, and it's nowhere near as exciting as what happened in Bitcoin, but it's also expanding the offerings that an individual investor can use within their own compliant portfolios to own these assets. Now, I think it's great. I mean, Jamie Dimon hasn't turned the corner yet, but Larry Fink has.
It depends on if you talk to Donald Trump or not, because he did say in a Bloomberg interview that he was considering him for a Treasury Secretary and that he had come around quite a bit on the cryptocurrency. So it's interesting to see. I want to ask you about Trump later, but just wanted to throw that note in there for listeners.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're right. You're right. And I think Jamie Dimon would be fantastic for either party. We need that kind of experience, that international experience, domestic experience. He would be fantastic for any role in cabinet to do with finance policy. That would be great. Trump, I know, is pro crypto. I've had a chance to talk to him. That's important for me because I am pretty long in crypto, but not just crypto. We should also expand our thinking in this narrative we're having right now about digital payment systems because the largest market on earth is FX, it's currency. And I think there's huge friction and fees and costs associated with transferring FX from, let's say, here in the US to Zurich in Geneva. If I want to, I'm a huge watch collector. If I want to buy a piece unique, I have to do it in Swiss francs. It is an absolute pain in the ass to transfer the US dollars into Swiss francs. And it's timely and expensive. And there's no added value there. If I could use, now let's be specific. I'm not going to use Tether. I'm going to use USDC. Now, why would I do that? I'm very biased. I own a piece of Circle. That's another picks and shovels investment. Circle, and I have no inside information. I'm just saying as a shareholder, at some point, my guess is it's going to go public because now the narrative around stablecoins as digital payment systems has vastly changed over the last 24 months. It was a vilified asset. And now all of a sudden people are starting to see the merit of being able to transfer at a very low cost USDC. And if I wish, I can stake it on some exchanges. And so it's very important to think a little bit beyond just the speculative value of a Bitcoin or whether it's digital gold or not. For me, the stablecoin and digital payment system is a bigger market than any of these. And so I need to have a piece of that as well. That's all part of the narrative. People bundle crypto into one big asset class, but the nuances on level 2 or tokens versus stable coins versus Bitcoin versus what Ethereum does, they're all different.
Versus a celebrity meme coin, which I want to get your thoughts on later in the show. But you bring up payments, and I think that's an excellent point. I know WonderFi recently launched WonderFi Labs, saying that they're going to build their own layer 2 network and accompanying custodial wallet. Can you imagine that USDC gets populated on that network? And more largely, like, what are you hoping to see as WonderFi builds out its own layer 2 in terms of applications that people use?
Well, you just nailed it right there with that. You're absolutely right. A level 2 makes it so that the common man or woman that wishes to participate on the platform with complete transparency, with complete liquidity, with ease of use, that's what they need. That's why they need their own level 2. Coinbase did the same thing. M2, I'm sure, will do the same thing. I mean, think about it. If I make a decision today, it's so relevant that we're having this conversation. Just minutes ago before I came on, I was sitting with my wife and she said, I want to start doing my own direct investing. I want to do it on my laptop myself. I want to control my own assets. She had just inherited some money from a family member that passed away. And we sat together and allocated across a bunch of ETF platforms. And then, of course, she said, well, what about crypto? And I said, well, look, let's just do one thing at a time. But obviously, if she had the ease of use that she had on that basic platform she could do on her iPhone, which would be that level 2 strategy for WonderFi, she could allocate 5%. She could, maybe 2.5% in ETH, 2.5% in Bitcoin, and just ride the pony with the two different assets. And if she wanted to do digital payment, she could use USDC. She'd go fiat to USDC onto the exchange, buy the assets, and even stake some of them. WonderFi provides staking, and it's totally compliant with tax authorities and with the OSC. So you start to think about the future of where this is going. When anybody, anywhere, on a compliant basis can allocate, you're going to expand that asset class dramatically. So I'm very excited about this next phase. And it's why I own these. WonderFi is picks and shovels. To me, in my approach, what is it? It's as if I was under the oak tree when they founded the New York Stock Exchange. Of course, I want to own a piece of it long term.
When you think about crypto and stocks under the same roof, Robinhood comes to mind. And obviously, like they received a Wells notice not too long ago from the Securities and Exchange Commission saying that an enforcement action could be coming because of some of their crypto tech. But when you look at the approval of spot Ethereum ETFs, the way it was abrupt, the way it was such an about piece, people really did get the interpretation that it was sort of like shifting winds, if you will, in a regulatory sense. What do you make in terms of the way the SEC's regulation approach has evolved post FTX to where we are now?
Okay, it's a great question, and I want to preface the answer with, let's almost call it a disclaimer. I have taken so much heat about Gensler over the last 18 months, an unbelievable amount of pushback on the comments I make. Here's my take of Gensler, okay? I have watched this guy for years. I respect consistency in policy. He has been 100% consistent on every single statement he's made. He has never varied from it. He's never going to. People think they can beat him up or bully him into changing his mind. Not going to happen. I watched him get absolutely firebombed in a hearing on the Hill. I personally attended it. I have never seen such a beating, and he was totally stoic. He just doesn't change his mind. Now, when you see that, and you're a Vlad at Robinhood or you're Brian at Coinbase, you got to read the room. You got to understand this guy is not going to change. You can't litigate him out of the game. By the way, he's winning by the number of bodies in jail. Have you noticed? Like, it's not like the guys that are sitting in the slammer right now thought they could beat him at his game. He came after them and he won. I mean, read the room. My whole point is, here's the real prize. Forget about the fight with Gensler. If you can get on side with his staff, one way or another, so he's not suing you in oblivion all the time. The real prize is the institutional and sovereign wealth waiting to use your platform, waiting to use it on a compliant basis so they can go to their compliance department and say, hey, listen, I'm going to put some assets onto Coinbase, or I'm going to stick some assets on a Robinhood because I like some program they've got that works for us. Is that okay if I throw a few $1,000,000 in? Because I'm going to put a 1% weighting. That's the prize.
I think when you do look at the firms that have like worked collaboratively with Gary Gensler, one of them that comes to mind is Prometheum, which was trying to offer the trading of digital asset securities, which is a term that we hear often. And one of the first cryptocurrencies that they said they were going to offer under their system is Ethereum, believe it or not. And that was before the approval of ETFs. So their trajectory as a company has changed, and they testified on the Hill. So I'm not sure whether or not the idea of just sort of working too collaboratively with the SEC has benefited companies. And I just want to throw something out that I was reporting on yesterday, which is where Citi Research issued an upgrade for Coinbase's stock price from neutral to a buy. And they put a price target in that was 33% above their current price. And one of the reasons why they said it is because of the idea of a crypto friendly administration, but also the removal, the overturning of Chevron deference, sort of a Supreme Court framework that looks at the scope of the authority of administrative agencies. So, do you think that there is potentially like a change in your view in terms of Coinbase's fight as the larger the Supreme Court makes these sorts of decisions? Because I think last year you talked to me and you actually described it as an endless slew of arrows hitting your back as you lose billions of dollars in market cap each week.
So has the future, thought changed? In other words, you're talking about a Trump administration, perhaps, or even we haven't heard policy from the new potential candidate for the Democrats. We don't know how Harris feels about crypto yet. She has no track record. She has no track record at all, which is probably in some ways a benefit for her. She's got a blank slate. She can start bringing policy in any way she wishes, and many hope she goes to the center, which would make her very competitive because, I mean, we don't know is the bottom line. And I was dealing with that this morning as well in terms of the allocations on energy that we're looking at. If we thought the Trump Burgum version of energy was going to be the situation, we would be putting more weighting into this asset class. it's one of the 11 sectors of the S&P. It's very inexpensive right now. But I'm also very interested to hear what Harris is going to say about crypto. But your point is, you can take two positions. You can say, okay, I am going to stay at war with Gensler because I feel I'm a leader in the space and I'm just going to continue to fight. And that is a position people can take. And I'm going to spend millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, because I'm fighting a foe that has unlimited capital, the US government, unlimited resources, the US government. And I'm a private company, I may be trading publicly, and I have limited resources. So in my view of the world, if I were running it, the way I would do it is say, what's the real objective? The real objective, forget about Coinbase, say any exchange, any platform, is AUM, assets under management. That's the goal, because you get paid a percentage of your assets under management. What's my fastest path to more AUM? Institutional and sovereign wealth and pension. Will they play with me while I'm at war with their regulator? Maybe some will, but not many. And that's where the road becomes very tricky. That's my point. If you could go, and I'm not saying they will, but if I were running these things, I would fly to Washington, D.C. I would meet with the staff, private session, and say, okay, guys, new kid in town, want to be compliant. Which of these programs that you're so unhappy with do I have to get rid of for now to get 100% check the box with you and settle everything?
Well, I mean, you definitely saw that with these asset managers removing ETF staking from their applications in the run up to these things launching. And, you just mentioned Kamala Harris there in terms of her being a blank slate when it comes to crypto policy. Did you see it reported yesterday that Mark Cuban was getting specific questions about cryptocurrency from Harris's team? My colleague had the chance to email with him a little bit, and it seemed like they were interested in sort of learning more through him.
I think that's great. I think they should reach out and try and develop some policy. Obviously, Mark's been very involved, and he's been through the period of the crypto cowboy as well with Voyager and all the rest of that stuff. So he's a good resource to talk to, and clearly politically leans that way, which is great. I think it's terrific. I think the more they do with any resource on that to develop policy is very good. But there's a lot of policy on the Hill already. I mean, Jill DeBrandt and others, I've been working on the Hill now for 3 years on all these different bills. Some get stalled out, some get advanced. Generally speaking, which I really like, and a point you're kind of getting to here, is this is becoming bipartisan. And I think that's fantastic. We're going to have crypto policy regardless of who goes into the White House. So it could be a very good thing that's actually happening here if we're hearing those signals. And I think for Harris, her big opportunity is to say, look, I've been in the shadows for 3.5 years. I don't have a track record, which is great because here's my new vision of where I'm taking the country, which I think would be fantastic to hear from. Because for both of these, we're at the phase now in terms of policy. And I tell this to everybody, I don't make any money on politics. I make money on policy. And that's the same for every investor. So I'm really interested to hear what her vision of the world is going to be. And I think we're going to get through this short-term phase where she says everybody who hates Trump should vote for me. Well, she's already got that vote. And everybody that hates the left should vote for Trump. Well, he already has that vote. It's 7 states that are going to determine which one of these are going to set policy up. So those independent voters need to hear policy. And I'm very excited about that, including, as you've just detailed, crypto policy. And I think we're going to hear it from both sides.
When you take a step back and you look at the way that crypto policy has gone about, you talked about Fit 21 passing with bipartisan support. Can you imagine anything else that Democrats can really do to make inroads with crypto voters? Because it's interesting. I've heard people sort of phrase it as like a philosophical thing where people who lean more libertarian, their values align with crypto. But at the same time, I definitely think you can make the argument that more the liberal left in social goods, that there's a root for crypto there. Maybe this is just a big distraction from the tech at the end of the day, where it's like, you have offices come in. It sounds like crypto regulation is going to get passed regardless of who's in the White House. I sometimes wonder if it overshadows the technical conversation or just like the markets conversation in general when it comes to these assets.
I like where you're going with this narrative, and I'll tell you why. Think about it this way. If you're a conservative or you're a liberal, there's a whole generation of people coming up that are already very crypto savvy and want to be more so, particularly around digital payment systems, but also for a social support reason. If you think about how inexpensive it is, if you have safe wallets and everybody's got a wireless device, a cell phone, how you can make this good for people that are underbanked as well. I mean, that's been an argument for a while. And so I would think that for each party to endorse crypto as a asset platform, people get confused. I'm endorsing Bitcoin versus crypto. Crypto is, to me, going to be the 12th sector of the S&P within 5 years because it services
Wow.
all the 11 sectors one way or another. But Bitcoin is just one asset in crypto, a speculative priced asset. I hate the fact that we try and define crypto with Bitcoin because Bitcoin has a lot of volatility to its price, as you well know, but stablecoins do not. And they are also in this universe. And so digital payment systems are different than what Ethereum or a level 2 could be. So I'm just a little cautious to throw it all in to one basket called crypto.
You could not be more right when it comes to this wide-ranging basket term for crypto at this point. I mean, as a reporter, I try to look at crypto through four distinct lenses: markets, technology, culture, and the final one being legal. I like to look at the legal elements of crypto. It often feels sometimes that the industry is different corners are pulling in opposite directions. At the same time, you have the launch of these Ethereum ETFs. You have different celebrities cropping up day by day, pumping out their own meme coins and saying, I made this coin, I think it's awesome and it's going to be great. Just like a few names in terms of Caitlyn Jenner, Iggy Azalea, Andrew Tate, and Rich the Kid. I mean, I literally logged onto Twitter this morning and the first thing I saw was Scottie Pippen, of all people, say that he's going to launch a quote, game-changing decentralized project within the next day. Where do you fall on meme coins as assets that different celebrities are launching, and what sort of considerations do they need to have in mind?
That's a great question. I've been approached so many times by so many different groups for the Mr. Wonderful token. The thing is, I eat my own cooking. When I talk about a financial asset, whether it be Bitcoin or gold or recently sports trading cards, I buy these assets myself. I invest in them. They become part of my portfolio. I understand them for what they are. I talk about why I own them and the risk associated with them. Would I buy my own coin and say this coin has financial merit because it's got Mr. Wonderful on its name? I don't think so, because that's not cooking I would eat. Do I care if a celebrity puts out a coin? What value does it have for me long term? Why would I put that into a portfolio? What do they really bring to the table that has any value other than celebrity? Above all, I'm an investor. That's what I do. I invest in people in the context of Shark Tank. I invest in assets in the context of gold and Bitcoin and trading cards, stocks, bonds. I like to think that, to the extent that people watch what I do or are interested in what I do, that I'm giving them valuable advice. Buying a celebrity token, I'm holding myself back a little bit. That is the definition of a shitcoin. I mean, what else could it be?
Well, I think there's people that are hopeful about it. There are people that, frankly, are tired of it at this point. And I think when celebrities enter the space, it requires a certain level of nuance. And I'm sure you yourself would know, as a former Patriots fan, or as a former Patriots fan, I'm still a Patriots fan, and I know you are too. I was curious, like, have you had the opportunity to talk with people like Tom Brady or other former FTX spokespeople? Because I get the sense that some of these people who got wrapped up in this are just never going to enter the space again. And I almost wonder if history is like repeating itself in a certain way when it comes to these meme coins that launch one day and then the next week they're forgotten.
That's a great question. And it's very timely because you may not know this, but Michael Rubin was a guest shark, Fanatics guy, last season on Shark Tank. And he sat to my left. I really liked that guy. We got to know each other a little bit. And so he invited me to his white party a few weeks ago in the Hamptons. And I went, and I know Tom already. Tom is a watch guy, by the way. So he's big in watches. So we know each other from that aspect. I mean, there was a piece that Rolex brought out called The Puzzle. There was only 3 ever brought to North America. There was a rose gold, a white gold, a yellow gold. And so each of us, it was Brady, myself, and John Mayer, we're all major collectors, we didn't know which one we'd get allocated. I got the yellow gold. I think Tom got pink and white gold went to Mayer. When I saw Tom at the party, we started talking about, that party, by the way, the white party is turned into the watch party. Because if you see what comes on the wrists of people at that party, the collectors, I mean, it was really hard to get a piece that was going to be unique because it's like a prom. You don't want to wear the other guy's suit or a woman doesn't want to wear the woman's dress. You want to have So I ended up wearing a Cartier Crash Platinum, the only one in the world. I knew with certainty that no one else would have it because they'd only made two. One was in the
There you
museum
go.
and I had the other. And so Tom saw that and I thought I won the night for the watches. And he said, Kev, sorry, I'm going to kick your ass right now with a one of a kind piece unique platinum and diamond AP, which has my Super Bowl wins at the 11 o'clock marker.
That's a little bit of a flex, I'm not gonna lie.
To me, I'm saying to myself, what the heck? I mean, how could he pull that off? But I hand it to him, hats off. And yes, we are involved in the FTX thing, but we have the same lawyers. I don't know what's going to happen with that thing. And I obviously can't talk about litigation, but
Sure, sure.
it's so many people in that lawsuit. I mean, FTX is the definition of the crypto cowboy, period. But it didn't hold back crypto. It didn't change anything. And I think that's the lesson learned.
That's a very good point, especially when you talk to Solana investors that saw that thing go down to like, I believe, $10 or $15. And
I own Solana too. I own it.
that is a really interesting opportunity to sort of ask about what your portfolio looks like in terms of your allocations to crypto. I can imagine it would lean heavily towards Bitcoin with a little bit of Ethereum and Solana out there. Curious about that mix. And I think you mentioned HBAR as well, other things along those lines.
Polygon, Manic. I mean, here's the thing. I've met all the teams. I mean, I've spent a lot of time
Sure.
in the UAE, United Arab Emirates. Abu Dhabi is the capital of capital in the world. I do a lot of business there. The way I decided to do it is to say, okay, let's use the diversification methodology that's worked for me for 20 years. Let's say we're going to allocate 20% to crypto, which is what we did when we started. And we're back up at 18. We're almost back to where we started. And I'm never going to let one position become more than 5% weighting. I can have between 1 and 5% in any asset. Now, I like liquidity, so the big positions are 5% fully in Bitcoin, 5% fully in ETH. And then you go down 22 other tokens that make up that portfolio. And I manage it on a mark-to-market basis. They're mark-to-market every day, and these things are trading 24 hours a day. And that's one of the compliance differences, that the markets close in New York. My whole team does a mark-to-market. We make sure that all our portfolios are compliant with our compliance officer, and then we report. The trouble with Bitcoin, obviously, or any token, is it's trading 24 hours. So we can only take an image, a snapshot image at 4 o'clock and say, all right, we're holding it at 5%. But if I wake up in the morning and Bitcoin's gone from 66,000 to 72,000, I got to sell that down to 5%. So we're managing that portfolio.
I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm guessing no meme coins are in that portfolio of crypto assets that you have.
Just for the fun of it, because I love Vlad, and you talked earlier about Robinhood, and I'm a huge fan of what they've done to democratize investing and educating people. I have an account there, and I think I have some Dogecoin in there, which I consider, a shit coin. It's sort of,
It's the OG of shitcoins, if you will.
yeah,
So
it's
there's that.
no, but it's okay. I mean, it's not. It doesn't go into the investment portfolio. It's no different than going to Las Vegas and saying, "Here's I'm going to take $500 out tonight. I'm going to go to the tables, and after I lose it all, I'll consider that the cost of entertainment." And
Yes.
so there's a couple of other ones I've had some fun with.
Well, on the topic of gambling, I would really love to get your perspective on this because it's kind of the hot thing in crypto, I feel like, right now. If you've heard of Polymarket, the blockchain based prediction platform,
Right.
their odds in terms of Biden dropping out or the different odds for presidential candidates, I mean, down to the individual swing states, you've got this flourishing betting market where people are putting up money. Is that something that you think is going to be popular long term? Do you think it speaks to just sort of the culture of sports betting, the way that's sort of infiltrated regular America, if you will? Just curious if you have any thoughts on Polymarket in general, because it seems like something that's really like having its time in the sun as election season approaches.
Oh, I think it'll have its time in the sun as the sports season grows in the fall too. Polymarket really is about odds making, and then you can attach a betting element to it. I think gambling will be regulated online and just continue to be so. It's been a very choppy market in terms of being profitable because customer acquisition is so expensive. I mean, even for the big guys, they have to offer $200, $300 incentives just to acquire a customer. And people trade multiple platforms if they can. Odds making, odds betting, predictions using these technologies looks really interesting to me across a wide range of topic matter. And I think what would happen is you drive a lot of traffic to people looking at that, saying, look, they're remarkably accurate, and I'm going to use it as a tool. Now, how you monetize that, the obvious way is gambling, but there's all kinds of regulatory risk and customer acquisition risk with that. But is it here to stay? 100%. I agree with you.
Final parting thoughts, just as we are focusing in on your bags. What are your thoughts on NFTs? Do you still own them? And do you think they're going to come back in a big way ever, because at the current moment, when you're right up to the grindstone, a lot of the oxygen for the NFT space in general has been just sucked out of the room by meme coins.
I don't think NFTs are coming back the way they were in the very bubbly speculative market. Where they interest me, and I'll give you an example. I recently allocated. This is a great use case. So I collect modern art, contemporary art, watches as alternative assets. Another area that has really interested me in the last 2 years that I just pulled the trigger on about 2 weeks ago was sports cards around soccer, F1, basketball, football, baseball. Obviously, if you look at some of the prices paid recently for Jordans, that's the granddaddy cards, these, logo cards in the millions of dollars. It's no different to me than the Warhol I own. So why don't I have some exposure to that? So here's my challenge. Do I go buy one card at a time, or do I form an index? Do I say, look, let's allocate, let me give you just round numbers because we're talking about it. Let's put $3 million up. Let's buy a portfolio of cards across all of the assets. I like soccer because soccer is going to be played World Cup in the US very shortly. I like F1. It's a growing asset class in the US, and the cards are interesting. Why not buy a portfolio? Then I'm going to vault them. I've got to pick a partner where I can vault the cards because I don't want to have them on site. And that's where the NFT and the blockchain comes into place, because I want to see my portfolio on my phone. I want to show it to my kids. I want to show it to other collectors. I want it to be done properly. I want it to be completely on the chain. So if I sell that card, I have the history of it. I think that's where NFTs come back in. They'll come back in
Mm.
on those kinds of asset classes. Also going to work on watch insurance. I have a product called Wonder Care about to launch for insuring these watches. I want to insure them at the spot price that they're trading at last night worldwide, which I can scrape off the internet. So if I lose this one of a kind Journe, I have at least an idea of what it's worth to replace it. I can't stop at looking at these watches. I'm wearing this is an FP Journe red dial from the restaurant in Geneva. It's the only one in North America, right off Journe's wrist.
Wow.
And here's another. So these are dueling elegance. One has Abu Dhabi time and one has New York time on it. I love it.
The only other person I've seen wear two watches at once was Bill Murray. So it's good
Well,
favor to be with.
listen, I want you to wear two watches because I want to insure them. I'm promoting my insurance business here.
Wonderful. Any parting thoughts of wisdom for crypto investors as they look to the rest of the year? Thank you
I
for your
think
time today. It's
I,
just
I'm,
been it's been an absolute great time.
I appreciate it. I think we're in a renaissance period. I think we're in an upswing. I think we're in the summer of crypto again. I think a lot of good things are going to happen in the next 18 months, regardless of who gets into the White House. I think it's going to be a crypto embrace as a sector, digital payments. I think Congress on a bipartisan basis will endorse this. I think Gensler will not change his mind, but is opening up to ideas on markets that, obviously the fact that we have Bitcoin and Ethereum now in a wrapper on an ETF, I would never buy them because I'm never going to pay the fees. I'd rather own the exchanges, have an account. But 20% of the float's going to go into these things. And I think that's great. I think it's all great. I say if if you and I are talking about crypto, we have survived the entire era of the crypto cowboy. And you and I are not in jail. So let's celebrate that.
Cheers to that, Kevin. Cheers to that. Thank you again for coming on and taking time out of your day to talk shop about crypto. I'll give you some updates on how Nashville is.
I think that's going to be great. The Trump speech, the whole vibe out of there. It's the biggest ever, I think, platform for crypto. This is going to be the show. I think you're going to have a great time.
It's a big moment. Well, take care. Thank you.